Once upon a time, in a charming village nestled between green hills and flowing rivers, there lived a young woman named Emily. She was kind, gentle, and hard-working. Emily worked as a maid in a large estate, where she spent her days caring for the family that lived there. Her duties included cleaning the grand halls, serving meals, and attending to the needs of her employers. Though she had a modest position, her heart was full of warmth, and she dreamed of a life beyond the dusty corridors of the estate. The estate was home to a wealthy man, Charles. He was a man of authority, known for his stern nature and unwavering principles. He had inherited the estate from his late father, and although he was not unkind, he was often absorbed in his responsibilities and the legacy of his family. He rarely paid attention to the everyday happenings of his home, believing that the staff would take care of everything. Emily, however, had caught his eye. It was not her beauty that first drew him in, but her grace and the quiet strength she carried herself with. There was something different about her that he couldn't quite explain. Charles began to notice Emily more and more as time passed, and he would find himself stealing glances at her during breakfast or in passing as she moved through the house. Despite his usual aloofness, he couldn't help but be drawn to her gentle demeanor. Emily, on the other hand, kept to herself. She was aware of Charles, of course, but she knew the boundaries of her role in the estate. She had seen the way others interacted with him, respectful yet distant, and she understood her place. One rainy afternoon, as Emily was dusting the large windows in the sitting room, Charles came in from the storm, drenched from head to toe. He had been out riding and had not anticipated the sudden downpour. He looked disheveled and tired, yet there was something strangely appealing about the raw vulnerability in his demeanor. Emily quickly moved to help him, offering him a towel and some warm tea. Charles, though usually reserved, found himself struck by her kindness. In that quiet moment, he began to see her not just as the maid of the house, but as a woman who was kind-hearted and genuinely compassionate. Days passed, and the two began exchanging more words, small at first, but gradually growing in depth. Emily would speak of the simple joys of the village, and Charles would share stories of his travels and the lessons he had learned. As their conversations grew, they discovered a mutual respect for each other. Emily was not afraid to speak her mind, something Charles admired. She was unpretentious and honest, with a deep understanding of the world around her. For the first time in years, Charles felt a sense of peace when he was near her. One evening, during a particularly beautiful sunset, Charles asked Emily to join him in the garden. They stood together in the fading light, the air cool and fresh. There, amidst the blooming flowers and the sound of rustling leaves, Charles confessed that he had developed feelings for her. It was a simple confession, but it held the weight of unspoken words and emotions. Emily, though startled, did not recoil. She had always sensed something in Charles that others didn't see. Beneath his hardened exterior, there was warmth, tenderness, and a desire to connect. She admitted, in a soft voice, that she too had grown fond of him. For weeks after that, they spent stolen moments together, talking about their dreams, their hopes, and the things that made them happy. However, the world they lived in was not kind to people like them. Emily was a maid, and Charles was the master of the house. Their love, though pure, was fraught with challenges. They both knew that their feelings for each other could never be fully accepted by society. Still, neither of them could deny the bond they shared. Charles often found himself torn between his obligations to his family's legacy and his love for Emily. Emily, though deeply in love, feared the consequences of such an unconventional relationship. One day, as Emily was walking through the village, she overheard a conversation between two of the other maids. They were gossiping about her growing closeness to Charles, and it wasn't long before the rumors reached the ears of those who mattered most. The estate was filled with whispers, and soon the family heard of the budding romance. Charles's father, who was still alive and very much involved in the running of the estate, was furious when he learned of the connection. He believed that such a relationship would tarnish the family name and disrupt the careful order they had maintained for generations. The pressure became too much for Emily, And one evening, after receiving a stern warning from Charles's father, she made the difficult decision to leave. She didn't want to cause Charles any more trouble, and though it broke her heart, she knew it was the only way for him to preserve his reputation and his place in the family. She left the estate without telling Charles, disappearing into the night with only a small bundle of belongings. Charles, devastated by her sudden departure, searched for her for days, but she was nowhere to be found. He spoke to the village people, but no one seemed to know where she had gone. His world felt empty without her, and he realized that he could not live without the woman he loved. He knew that he had to make a choice between duty and love. Finally, after much searching, he found her. Emily had returned to her childhood home, a small cottage on the edge of the village. She was content in her simple life, though her heart ached for the man she had left behind. When Charles arrived at her door, he was out of breath but determined. He asked her, with all the sincerity he had, if she would return to him. He didn't care about the estate or the expectations of his family anymore. All he wanted was her, in that quiet cottage, surrounded by the simple beauty of the life she had left behind. Emily saw the man she had fallen in love with, not as a master, but as a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for her. With tears in her eyes, she agreed to return with him, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. But they were willing to face it together, hand in hand. The two of them married in a small ceremony in the village, surrounded by friends and loved ones. Though their love had faced many trials, it had ultimately triumphed. They built a life together, one that was filled with love, respect, and understanding. Charles learned that the greatest wealth was not in titles or land, but in the heart of the person you love. Emily, in turn, realized that sometimes the greatest adventure lies not in the places you go, but in the people you choose to share your life with. Their love story became a tale passed down through generations, a reminder that true love knows no boundaries and that happiness can be found when two hearts are willing to be brave enough to follow their hearts, no matter the obstacles they may face. Years passed and Charles and Emily's love only deepened. The challenges they had once feared seemed insignificant compared to the life they had built together. Their union, though unconventional, became an inspiration to many in the village. People who had once whispered about their relationship now admired the couple for their strength and unwavering commitment to one another. Charles, who had once been a man bound by duty and expectations, had become someone entirely different. His heart had softened and his perspective on the world had changed. He no longer focused solely on the responsibilities of the estate. Instead, he found joy in the simplicity of life, in the laughter they shared, and in the quiet moments spent with Emily. He would often tell her that he never truly understood the meaning of happiness until she had entered his life. Emily, too, had grown in ways she hadn't anticipated. The life she had led as a maid had shaped her into a strong and independent woman. But her love for Charles had opened her heart to the idea that she could have more than just the quiet life she had once thought she wanted. She found fulfillment not in titles or material wealth, but in the way they nurtured each other's dreams. She had always believed in kindness and compassion, but with Charles by her side, she learned the true depths of love. Together, they traveled to places they had always dreamed of visiting. The adventures they shared became stories they would tell their children, and later, their grandchildren. Charles never lost his appreciation for the beauty in the world, and Emily's gentle spirit helped him see things with fresh eyes. The memories they made were treasures they carried with them, growing older but never growing apart. Eventually, their children were born, 2 sons and a daughter. The family grew, and with it, the love that had always defined Charles and Emily's relationship. Their children were raised with the same values that had brought them together: kindness, honesty, and the importance of family. Charles and Emily made sure to teach them that love wasn't something confined by expectations or rules, but rather, it was something that grew when nurtured with patience and understanding. As they grew older, the couple found themselves walking together through the same paths they had once walked in their youth. Their hair grayed and their steps slowed, but their love remained as strong as ever. They often spent their evenings sitting side by side in the garden, watching the sunset as they reminisced about their past. It was in these quiet moments, surrounded by the life they had created together, that they realized they had truly found something rare, a love that had endured all trials, a love that had overcome every obstacle. When the time came for them to part, it was not with sorrow, but with gratitude. Charles passed peacefully, his hand in Emily's, his heart full of love for the woman who had changed his life. Emily, heartbroken but content, knew that their love had transcended time. She lived for a few more years, always cherishing the memories of the life they had built and the love that had shaped every step of her journey. In the end, their love story became more than just a tale of two people. It was a story of transformation, of finding each other against the odds, and of building something beautiful together. It was a reminder to all who heard it that true love does not depend on circumstance or social status, but on the bond between two people who are willing to choose each other every day, no matter what life may bring. And so, the legacy of Charles and Emily lived on, not just in the estate they had once shared, but in the hearts of their children, grandchildren, and everyone who had been touched by the purity of their love. It was a story that would continue to be passed down for generations, reminding everyone that love, in its truest form, is a force capable of overcoming anything. As the years rolled on, the legacy of Charles and Emily's love continued to shape the lives of those who followed in their footsteps. Their children, now grown with families of their own, often gathered at the old estate, where the walls seemed to hum with the echoes of their parents' laughter. Though much of the world around them had changed, the values Charles and Emily had instilled in their family remained as steadfast as ever. The estate itself, once a symbol of wealth and power, had transformed into a place of warmth and comfort. It no longer stood as a reminder of status, but as a testament to the enduring love that had flourished within its walls. The grand halls where Emily had once cleaned now echoed with the sound of family gatherings and celebrations. The garden, which Charles and Emily had once walked hand in hand, was tended to by their grandchildren, who played among the flowers and trees their grandparents had planted together. One particular evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily's granddaughter, Lily, stood in the same garden where her grandparents had once shared their deepest moments. Lily had heard the story of her grandparents' love countless times, but it was only now, as she stood in the very spot where their love had blossomed, that she truly understood its depth. She had always admired her grandmother's kindness and strength, but now she saw how the bond between her and Charles had shaped the family they were all a part of. Lily walked over to the old oak tree, the one that Charles and Emily had planted during their early days together. It had grown tall and strong over the years, its branches wide and welcoming, much like the love that had anchored their family. She sat beneath its shade, feeling a quiet sense of connection to her ancestors, as though the very roots of the tree held the memories of their love. As she sat there, lost in thought, her mother, Emily's daughter, joined her. She smiled softly and sat beside Lily, her eyes distant, as if reflecting on her own memories of her parents. "You know," her mother said, "your grandparents always believed in the power of love, but they also knew that love takes work. They weren't perfect, and they faced their share of challenges, but they never let go of each other. They taught us all that love is about choices, choosing to be kind, to be patient, and to grow together." Lily nodded, her heart swelling with admiration. She had always known that her family was special, but now, as an adult, she understood the true weight of that love. It wasn't just a fairy tale. It was a bond that had been forged through hardship, sacrifice, and a deep commitment to one another. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner in the great hall, stories of Charles and Emily's love were once again shared. The room was filled with laughter, tears, and fond recollections of the two people whose love had changed the course of their lives. It was clear that their memory would live on, not just in the walls of the estate, but in the hearts of everyone who carried their story forward. In the years to come, the family continued to honor the values Charles and Emily had lived by. Their children and grandchildren would go on to have their own families, each one touched by the example set by the couple's enduring love. Though time marched forward and the world around them changed, the love between Charles and Emily remained a constant, a guiding light that helped their descendants navigate the complexities of their own lives. As the estate eventually passed down through generations, it was no longer just a symbol of wealth or power. It became a sanctuary of love, a place where family could come together, reflect on the past, and look toward the future with hope. The garden where Emily and Charles had once walked hand in hand was now a place where their great-grandchildren played, their laughter echoing through the very air that had once been filled with the quiet whispers of their grandparents' love. And so, the love story of Charles and Emily lived on, not in the pages of a book, but in the hearts of those who remembered them. It was a story